Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. About as loaded of a show as we've had all year right now. The defending champs are done. As I predicted, they were eliminated last night by the Phoenix Suns. The Clippers could face the exact same fate tonight against the Dallas Mavericks. I'll get into both situations. Also, second round starts tomorrow. The most anticipated series, no doubt, is Milwaukee, Brooklyn. I think it's going 7. I'll predict who wins that series as well as the upcoming 3, the other 2 out west and the other one out east, which, by the way, I think is really interesting as well. A lot to get into today. LeBron's legacy, was it affected? Was it not affected by last night and by the entire series? I'll get into that in just a second. But first, and I tried to pull up the image to put on the screen. I wasn't able to do it for some reason. So I'm going to try and see if I can do it with my phone here. If y'all can see that, let's see if the camera will focus a little bit. There we go. You see that right there? That right there? That, ladies and gentlemen, in case you were wondering, is Cancun. So I just wanted to have all Lakers Nation in here. Put your hands in. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, Cancun. That is where the Los Angeles Lakers will be spending the rest of the NBA playoffs, or at least the next couple of weeks, is Cancun, because their season is over. I was wrong about this team. Dead wrong. I had them winning back-to-back championships. I had them getting to the finals and beating Brooklyn in 6 before the season started, and that obviously fell flat on its face. They couldn't even get out of the first round. So I had to come to this reality, and I'm sure some Laker fans will at some point. I get it. It's raw. It sucks losing the first round, especially with all the injuries they had. I get it. But I'd pushed back on this initially when this, I guess, narrative or notion first came up, the whole bubble fraud thing. Looking back now, Lakers were bubble frauds. By the way, the Lakers weren't the only team that suffered from this. The Heat, he got swept in the first round. At least the Lakers took the Suns 6 games. So they took a better team 6 games. Miami, outside of game 1, just got blown off the floor by Milwaukee. Boston Celtics, they only got 2 extra weeks of rest more than the Lakers and Heat. They were the 7 seed this year. Did they deal with injuries? Sure, but just, come on, 7 seed and having all types of turnover in the organization with Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge and the whole bit. Only team that got to a conference finals last year that's done anything significant this year is the Denver Nuggets. The 3 seed without their second and 4th best player in Jamal Murray, and I haven't brought up Will Barton on this show, but I forgot he got hurt in a game against Golden State a month ago or a couple months ago. So he was done for the season, at least we assume. So without their, and I'll get into Portland a little later in the show when Damian Lillard, specifically. But Denver, with all these injuries, still 3 seed, and they're moving on in the next round to play Phoenix. And of course, I'll predict that series and the other second round series, later in the show. But here's why the Lakers will bubble frauds. Okay, first of all, I try to push back on all the stuff. I'm not even a Laker fan, man. I got no dog in the fight. I'm a Warriors fan. Okay, so I'm unbiased here. It sure helped that the Lakers got 4 months off. Can we acknowledge that? Okay, Laker Nation, can we please acknowledge that? That the fact that y'all got 4 months off, an injury-prone Anthony Davis, which manifests itself time and time and time again this year, it showed. A LeBron James, who last year started to kind of wear down towards the end of the season, all of a sudden he gets a 4-month break, comes back in the bubble, and is unbelievable. Now, this is LeBron's LeBron. He's the king. He's the second greatest player of all time. But you look at this whole roster. We thought Frank Vogel was the second coming of Phil Jackson for a moment there, at least on the defensive end. And he's still a great defensive coach. But when it came time to put the right rotations in, when it came time to make adjustments, he got completely outcoached by Monty Williams. And Monty Williams is a heck of a coach. Nobody's denying that. But if you're a championship head coach, you got to make those adjustments. And the reality is last year, the Lakers didn't really have to. Because after game 1 against Portland, they blew through the Blazers. Outside of game 1 against Houston, they blew through the Rockets. They blew through Denver. For the most part, in part because Miami did have injuries to Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic, they blew through Miami. So they weren't really tested. They were never in an elimination game last year. None of those series even went to a game 7. The only series that went to game 6 was the NBA Finals. So that tells you how dominant the Lakers were last year in the bubble. And so I look at this and I say, when I looked at, I saw the stat earlier today, and it's pretty eye opening if you're a Lakers fan. Let me see if I can find it here. All right, here we go. Of the last, now just listen to this. Of the last 18 NBA champions, the Los Angeles Lakers last season gave up the most points, a higher field goal percentage, and three-point percentage than any champion in the last 18 years. Like, there's a little bit of stuff in there. You know me, I'm anti-asterisk. Even as a Warriors fan, right? People say, the Toronto championship in 2019 has an asterisk because KD played 12 minutes in the entire series. Klay Thompson missed Game 3 and missed the rest of Game 6 after he tore his ACL. Do I believe Golden State would have won if they were healthy? Duh. But I'm not one to say asterisk because at the end of the day, you got to get it done. And the reality is, save for injuries, which are a part of sports, it was a normal situation, right? First 2 games in Toronto, next 2 in Golden State, next game in Toronto. The final game was in Golden State where the Raptors won the championship. So while the injuries were maybe a little over the top more than we usually see, the format of travel, that was totally the same, whereas in the bubble, there was no flights. Now, does this mean the Lakers championship window is closed? Yes, I think it does. Barring a big move, barring a trade for a Bradley Beal. They're not getting Steph Curry. The Lakers fans give up the Steph Curry dream. He's going to sign the extension with Golden State this summer. That's what every single report coming out of the Bay Area says. He's going to sign the extension that'll pay him in excess of $50 million to stay with the Warriors because once they get Klay back, you and I both know they're championship contenders next year. And certainly better than the Lakers without a doubt. But you look at this roster. Kyle Kuzma. I think last night was his last game as an LA Laker. Okay, I think he played himself right out of LA. Okay, Dennis Schroeder. Great defensively, played his tail off defensively yesterday. But had too many moments where he's 0 for 9 or 1 for 10. Like, Dennis Schroeder in this series, save for game 2, was bad. Like, very bad. Andre Drummond. People are like, why didn't Andre Drummond play last night? My question is, what took so long for him not to play last night? Andre Drummond was a liability out on the floor. Right? Liability defensively. Ayton gave him the business when Anthony Davis wasn't guarding him, when Anthony Davis was healthy. I mean, he had Game 5, the last game Andre Drummond played, and he gave you a goose egg. 0 points. Okay, people say, Marc Gasol. Marc Gasol needs to give you more. I agree. But if anything, what Marc Gasol did is he cleared the lane for LeBron James to drive and kick, which is what he did, and had success in the second half doing that. But ultimately, obviously, it wasn't enough. The Suns built a 29-point lead. Lakers, eventually in the fourth quarter cut it to 10, but it never really felt like the Lakers were truly going to make a comeback. Like, it just didn't. Once Phoenix built that big lead and D-Book was going off, 47 points. I mean, he was sensational. Once he got in a hot streak, once Jay Crowder seemed like he couldn't miss a three, Chris Paul making those little big plays down the stretch in the fourth quarter when the Lakers are starting to get momentum. Chris Paul shoots him in the neck, or shoots him in the heart, I should say, with those, big mid-range jump shots and those steals defensively and rotations. Like, Chris Paul was excellent last night. Like, Chris Paul, I've made the case he should have been in the top 5 for MVP. Maybe he did. I don't know. But he should finish the top 5 for MVP voting this year. Because while Devin Booker is the better player, if we're going to go off, and I've beaten the table on this, most valuable player, they weren't in this position. They didn't make the playoffs last year. Phoenix didn't. And I know they went 8-0 in the bubble, and they were good. Give them credit. Devin Booker was great. Devin Booker's always been a scorer. But you need that glue guy. You need that leader. As good as Devin Booker is, and he's great, he is turning into a superstar right before our eyes. That doesn't make him a leader. Kawhi Leonard's a superstar. He's not a leader. Chris Paul is. And that was the missing link for Phoenix. Got the coach, got the young talent, got the superstar in Devin Booker. You just need a leader, and they got that in Chris Paul, and it's, shown to be, the difference in last year and this year. But simply put, the Lakers lost to a better basketball team. LeBron said it himself last night. He said they're a great basketball team. He said give Monty Williams credit, Book, Chris Paul, his banana boat buddy Chris Paul. They're obviously as tight as anybody. Simply, the Lakers lost to a better team in Phoenix. It reminds me a little bit of 2011. When the Lakers and Kobe were dealing with all sorts of injuries, they come off their second straight championship, seemed like they were running on fumes, and they just ran into a better Dallas Mavericks team, and Dallas, I believe, swept them. And that was kind of it for the Lakers, the Kobe Pau Gasol Lakers, as far as being championship contenders. And I think, by the way, Anthony Davis last night, respect him for trying to go out there and play. I wouldn't have held it against him if he didn't. Listen, groin injuries, and I talked about this yesterday, groin injuries are like back injuries and hamstring injuries. They don't just go away. You can get treatment, but soft tissue injuries, and I'm not a doctor, obviously, let's make sure we make that clear. I'm not a doctor, but soft tissue injuries, you just got to rest them. You can get all the treatment you want, but they need rest. That's why Anthony Davis didn't play in Game 5. That's why he had no business being out there in Game 6. I mean, 2-3 minutes in, he's already limping out there, and it was like, yeah, a respect to him for trying to go out there and get something done, but he couldn't have been out there on the floor. I don't know who let him out there. If I were his agent, I don't know who his. Oh yeah, Rich Paul's his agent. Clutch Sports. If I was Rich Paul, I wouldn't have let him play. It's as simple as that. Maybe LeBron had a say in it. I don't know, but Anthony Davis did not deserve, but he didn't need to be out there on the floor yesterday. I mean, he couldn't move laterally. Even Dennis Schroeder said yesterday that after the game in his press conference that Anthony Davis was struggling in warmups. Like, people compare this to Kevin Durant when everybody's saying, KD, don't play. You got nothing to gain and everything to lose, right? In the 2019 finals when he rushed back from his calf injury. But the difference, and KD obviously went down the second quarter and ruptured his Achilles, and it cost him all of last season. But the difference in KD and Anthony Davis was, if you remember, KD looked like KD in warmups. He looked great. He looked spry. He looked quick. He hit like 3 threes to start the game. He looked outstanding. He was playing great defensively. Like, it was just a crappy break for Golden State in the second quarter of that game. Whereas Anthony Davis, I don't even know if he was 50% out there. I don't even know if he was 50%. I think Charles Barkley said it best, that I don't know if it has anything to do with Anthony Davis's training the offseason. Is it hydration? Is it stretching? I don't know. But bottom line is, he's 28 years old. Chuck said it best. You shouldn't have this many injuries at 28 years old. I get you're a big man, and big guys are going to get hurt more than little guys, right? Because this is a hard floor. If you're going to fall at times, and it's going to be, your body's going to bear the brunt of that more than if you're a small player. But still, he's got. I don't know if it's the offseason. I don't know what it is, but Anthony Davis has proven to be injury prone. Last year was the exception. That's not the Anthony Davis you're going to get on a normal basis. And so, and I'll get to LeBron in literally just a second here, but simply put, and I, I've talked to Lakers fans about this. It just wasn't meant to be. It's just, it's one of those situations. It just wasn't meant to be. And I talked about this yesterday. Every single champion, everyone, I don't care how talented you are, every champion gets a break or breaks or luck, if you want to call it that. Right? Golden State in 2015, Kevin Love and Kyrie were hurt. Cleveland in 2016, Draymond Green got suspended, Andrew Bogut got hurt, and Iguodala was limited with back spasms. Okay, let's go to 2018. Houston is a 3-2 lead on Golden State. They're looking to advance to the finals, and Chris Paul pulls his hamstring in Game 5 and is done for the rest of the series. 2019, Toronto. KD's out basically the entire series, and Klay Thompson misses Game 3. And after playing out of his mind, Game 6 Klay of the finals, he tears his ACL, and that's it for him. And then last year for the Lakers, the bubble. It was a break. It was that helped. Getting 4 months off, getting Anthony Davis healthy, getting a 35-year-old LeBron in his 17th year, it helped. It did. And so, whoever the champion's going to be this year, we'll look back and they'll have gotten a break. And it's not a knock, but you need breaks, whether that be health, whether that be maybe a call here and there. I don't know. But every champion gets a break at some point, whether it's in the championship round or prior. And so the Lakers didn't get those breaks. Man, as a result, I think they were exposed for what they were, bubble frauds. Now to LeBron James. Now, anybody that knows me has knows that I believe that if you don't have Michael Jordan and LeBron James as the two best basketball players of all time, I don't think you can talk the game of basketball. I don't. You can have Kobe in your top three. I got Kobe at 4, God rest his soul. I've got Kareem at 3, Kobe 4, Magic 5. I think I got Larry Bird. It's either Larry Bird or Tim Duncan 6. I'm going to go back and redo my top 10, top 15, something like that, and we can do it on the show, during the offseason. But the point is, those are the two best ever. And LeBron James did something last night that he's never done in his NBA career, and that's lose a first-round series. He had been 14-0 up to this point, and he fell last night in 6 games, obviously, to Phoenix. And people are like, oh, this is just damaging to LeBron James' legacy. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. The greatest ever, Michael Jordan, the GOAT, which I believe he is. Michael Jordan lost 1 first-round series. How about 2? How about 3? He lost 3 first-round series, and in 2 of those, he got swept. Okay? Now, back in Jordan's day, the first round was a best of 5. Just the first round, not the entire playoffs, but the first round was best of 5, not best of 7. So, Jordan's pre-Pippen, before they got Scottie Pippen, and this goes to my thing of, I don't care how great you are, you need help. Nobody's ever carried a team to a championship. Don't give me Dirk in 2011. Jason Terry played the series of his life, right? I mean, Jason Terry, argument could have been made that he was the MVP of that finals. I mean, he was excellent. So everybody needs help to win championships. Michael Jordan, pre-Scottie Pippen, 1-9 in the playoffs. 2 sweeps. And that includes, by the way, we talk about Jordan's greatest playoff game ever was in a loss. A record he still holds to this day. 63 points in a double overtime loss to the Boston Celtics. Right? So Jordan, people forget this. And I think Michael even talked about this during The Last Dance, which we all saw last spring during, the early stages of the pandemic. That the narrative before Jordan won that first championship in 1991, the narrative around Jordan was, man, he's unbelievable. He's great. He might be the best we've ever seen. But he don't have the rings. He doesn't have those big signature moments in conference finals or finals games. So we can't put him past Magic or Larry. That was the narrative. And then Jordan, of course, won 3 straight championships, retired, played baseball, came back in the middle of the 94-95 season. They fell to Orlando in the second round. And then once he got, a full off season of work in, he filmed Space Jam and all that. They won 3 straight championships, and he obviously finished 6-0 with 6 finals MVPs. So, I mean, that obviously put that narrative to bed. So, I think this LeBron lost the first round to the Phoenix Suns, and people are like, oh, he lost to the Phoenix Suns. People act like Phoenix is trash. Like, I know Phoenix hadn't been to the playoffs in 11 years to this point, up until this year. Quit acting like Phoenix is just a bunch of bums. Okay, Devin Booker dropped 47 last night. He dropped 70 in a game once a few years ago. Chris Paul, right? Multi-time All-Star, one of the greatest point guards ever. DeAndre Ayton, one of the best young bigs in the league. Mikal Bridges, one of the better young wings. Jay Crowder, how many big playoff games has he been in? Monty Williams, one of the best coaches in the league. Up for Coach of the Year. Phoenix is not just a bunch of bums, okay? Like, this is a great basketball team, and they were a better basketball team than the Lakers. So, I think this notion, oh, LeBron lost the first round. Well, yeah, Jordan did it 3 times. Jordan got swept twice in the first round. Okay? So, like, the narrative, and I think Jordan's the greatest. I'm not, but it goes back to what I said about LeBron about 3 months ago on the show, and I held to it, that if LeBron James at season's end this year was holding the Larry O'Brien trophy in the finals, Bill Russell finals MVP trophy, he's passing Jordan in my opinion. Because you're talking about with this Laker roster, with that unreliable second player, with that coach who couldn't make adjustments, with Kyle Kuzma who couldn't do anything right on the floor, with Dennis Schroeder making all the primary decisions and not doing a very good job in doing so. being, not having home court the entire West playoffs, and then likely meeting Brooklyn in the finals, like, it was going to be darn near impossible. That's why I said, like, man, if he pulls this off, then no disrespect to Michael, but that he's past Michael. So, I don't think it hurts LeBron in the long term. Matter of fact, when his career's over, this will just be a little footnote, right? Did LeBron play great in the series? No. This isn't as bad, but people acting like this is like as bad as 2011 against Dallas. 2011 against Dallas, that final is the first one when he was with the Miami Heat. That was the worst series of LeBron James' career. They had a 2-1 lead. He was scared to take shots. I guess that's kind of where the notion began, that LeBron isn't clutch, which I've time and time again pushed back against on the show because it's simply not true. How many buzzer beaters has he hit in the playoffs? Okay, so like that, I guess that's where the notion started in 2011, and for some reason it's carried on a decade later, and it's just as not true today as it was 10 years ago, but that's another story for another day. But people bashing LeBron almost like as if he was, under these circumstances, supposed to win a championship in 2021 with an Anthony Davis who couldn't stay healthy to save his life, with a coach who couldn't make adjustments. By the way, LeBron's ankle, and I'm not trying to be a LeBron apologist. I love LeBron. LeBron's my guy. I mean, Steph's my favorite player. LeBron's in my top 5. I love watching LeBron James. It's his fans that drive me crazy. But LeBron, bad ankle, year 18, 36 years old. He's once again, and time again, how many times does this happen? LeBron is being asked to drag a team to a championship, and with a severe ankle injury in year 18, 36 years old, he couldn't do it. Physically, he couldn't do it. That's why, I talked about if the Lakers were going to win last night, whether AD played or not, they were going to need a 2018 version of LeBron James when he was just carrying a bunch of nobodies. I hate to sound harsh, but nobody's on that Cleveland Cavaliers team. J.R. Smith and 40-year-old Kyle Korver and George Hill and Tristan Thompson. I mean, he's just carrying those dudes to the finals. They had no business, playing against Golden State in 2018, but because of the greatness of LeBron, 40-point game after 40-point game, they got there. And so when you needed him to kick it into that next gear like he did 3 years ago, he's just not capable of doing that anymore. Or at least this year. Short off season, ankle injury, lower seed, just wasn't meant to be for LeBron. And I hate the criticism. This one just drives me crazy. The criticism of, after the game, he walked back to the locker room without shaking the Phoenix Suns' hands. Oh, my goodness. First of all, it ain't like he didn't shake anybody's hand. He obviously, we all know he's good friends with Chris Paul. Chris Paul's not going to give two craps about whether LeBron shook his hand after a game or not. Okay, Chris Paul and LeBron are still going to be cool. They're still friends. They'll be friends the rest of their lives. And then LeBron, after the game, went down the tunnel to Devin Booker, signed his jersey, took a picture with him, congratulated him. All right. But I guess people didn't want to bring that up. But I'll go back to what Jeff Van Gundy, the former NBA coach, he's an analyst now, or I guess a play-by-play guy. Or he's not play-by-play. Mike Breen is. Mike Breen's the greatest. But he's with ABC now with Mike Breen and Mark Jackson calling, the big finals games. And Jeff Van Gundy talked about this before when LeBron did this in the past. He said, I don't think sportsmanship is determined on whether you shake a dude's hand or not. Sportsmanship, a guy's going to respect you more if you play your you-know-what off against him for 48 minutes. You know that he gave everything that he had, which LeBron obviously did in this series, and he looked exhausted by the time it was over. Like, to me, that's all you can ask for. Like, I'm not going to, if I'm a Phoenix Sun, I'm not going to respect LeBron more or less whether he shakes my hand. Frankly, I don't care. I don't care if he shakes my hand or not. Did he give his all? Yes. Much respect to him. He did all he could. I'm not losing sleep at night. Tom Brady did the same thing, right? And I'm not losing sleep if Tom Brady doesn't shake Nick Foles' hand, right? Like, I'm not. It's not going to keep me up at night. So I think that's just a bunch of baloney. But the point of all this is, what is LeBron James? He's a 4-time NBA champion, four-time Finals MVP, four-time regular season MVP. He's got virtually every postseason record imaginable, not held by Michael Jordan. He's been to 10 NBA Finals. I mean, he's the second greatest player ever. I don't know if there's much he could do at this point to pass Jordan. It's certainly an uphill climb, to say the least. But this notion that this loss to Phoenix tarnishes his legacy, come on, man. Year 18, 36, ankle injury, shortened off season, 7 seed. They weren't the better team, obviously, as we saw in this series. They just lost to a better team in Phoenix. If the 3 first-round losses didn't hurt Jordan's legacy, why should it hurt LeBron's? We can't just keep moving the goalpost here. If it didn't hurt Jordan when he did it 3 times, it's not going to hurt LeBron when he did it once. So that's my thought on the Kings' legacy. He'll be back next year. I don't think he's the best player in the world anymore. I think that belongs to either Kevin Durant or Steph. I think KD's 1 right now, Steph's 2, and LeBron's somewhere around 3, or kind of around that Giannis area. So let me shift now to I've got a new name for him. The good old Los Angeles Clipper, to use a Southern term, I guess you'd say. The Clippers are in the exact same position the Lakers were last night. A game 6, down 3-2. The only difference is the Clippers are on the road, whereas the Lakers were at Staples Center last night. Clippers on the road, game 6 against the Dallas Mavericks. And this is it. Season's on the line. 9 p.m. Eastern. ESPN. This is it. Right? Last year, 3-1 lead, choked it to Denver. We know the story. And tonight, the question is, does 2 guys show up? Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. Now these are the games tonight. These are the games that has earned Paul George the nickname Pandemic P and whatever else you want to call him. Because in these games, he's not showed up. 2017, Game 4, down 3-0 against Cleveland. Nobody's expecting Indiana to win the series, but could you at least get a game and not get swept? Nope. Plays awful, inefficient, misses the game-winning shot. 2018, he's got Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony with him. Game 6 on the road in Utah. First round. He scores 5 points. 5. 2019, against Portland. He's awful the entire series, and to cap it off, Damian Lillard hits a 37-foot bomb at the buzzer to end the series and waves goodbye to Paul George. Last year, up 3-1 against Denver. Game 7 now. Denver's tied the series at this point. Paul George scores 10 points, I think 12 points, something like that. He barely got into the double digits. And in the fourth quarter, shot a corner three, and hit the side of the backboard. This is Paul George in pressure games. In must-win, win-or-go-home games. Tonight, he's got an opportunity to at least shut up the doubters like myself, like many, that, hey, I can perform under pressure. Watch me. The floor is yours, Paul. Now, to Kawhi Leonard. My criticisms of Kawhi Leonard have been pretty consistent on this show. Is he a great player? No doubt about it. Is he one of the best two-way players, if not the best two-way player in the league? No question. He's a 2-time champion, 2-time Finals MVP. But he's never been asked to lead a team. Ever. He's been the best player on both championship teams. 2014 Spurs, 2019 Raptors. The 2014 Spurs. Duncan, leadership. Parker, Ginobili, Popovich, leadership. You didn't have to worry about that. He could just go out there, be the Kawhi Leonard that he always is, be great, win Finals MVP. 2019. People are like, oh, Kawhi led that team. No, he was the best player on the team. Kyle Lowry was the leader in Toronto. And something that was interesting. In 2014, Kawhi's plus minus in the clinching game was a -2. In 2019, the game where they beat Golden State to win the championship, his plus minus was a -6. So, and I think plus minus is kind of a flimsy stat, but it goes to show you that leadership-wise, Kawhi wasn't the guy that the Clippers, or not the Clippers, that the Spurs or Raptors were leaning on. They didn't want to. They didn't have to. The Spurs leaned on Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, and Popovich. The Raptors leaned on Kyle Lowry. So Kawhi can go out there and be great. He doesn't have to lead. Tonight, he's got to be the leader. Not Rondo. Not Rajon Rondo cannot be your leader. Kawhi, this is your moment. Game 6 on the road. You airballed the game-tying shot in Game 5 at home. Rondo was getting in your business. It's on you tonight. It's on you. That all being said, I have Dallas winning this game. I've got them winning this game 110-106. I believe Luka Doncic will have another virtuoso, another 35-ish point game. It all depends for Dallas on if the other guys can help him, because I read the stat yesterday that the Mavericks, outside of Luka, the Mavericks hit 6 shots. So if your name was not Luka Doncic and you play for the Dallas Mavericks on Wednesday night in Game 5 in LA, you hit 6 shots as a team. That's how Luka carried the Mavericks in Game 5. So that's that you look at this, it's like, wow. So what's really interesting for me is if you're the Clippers, your back's against the wall. Typically, in your franchise history, when your back's been against the wall, you crumble. There's a reason this team has never even been to a conference finals. Minnesota, the Minnesota Timberwolves have been to a conference finals. Clippers never even got to that point. This is it. You want to silence the doubters? Win Game 6 on the road. Win Game 7 at home. And for the moment, we've shut up. But I've repeated on this show since February. It's not if the Clippers will lose. It's how they'll choke. Game 5, close game. Predictably, they choked. Tonight, by the way, they're 2-0 against Dallas at Dallas in the series. The home team has not won a single game in this entire series, which is pretty amazing. Dallas took the first 2 in LA. Clippers took the next 2 in Dallas. And Dallas took Game 5 in LA. So if it goes in this pace, Clippers win Game 6, Mavericks win Game 7 in advance. So that's ultimately what it comes down to if you're the LA. Not Terrence Mann, not Rajon Rondo, not Patrick Beverley, not these other guys. The guys you signed in 2019. If you're Steve Ballmer, the owner of the LA Clippers, when you said, we're going after the Larry O.B., short for, of course, the Larry O'Brien Trophy, given to the NBA champions every year annually. You got those guys. Will they show up? Remains to be seen. We'll find out in about 5 hours from now when the game is over. Very interested to see, because the Clippers have heard a lot. They've heard a lot since September when they lost in Game 7 in the second round against the Denver Nuggets. So if you're tired of hearing that, here you go. Backs against the wall. You have to win 2 straight games or your season is a wrap. Are you the championship team you've been trying to tell us about? It's all right in front of you. That being said, I'm taking Dallas to close out the series tonight at home. It's going to be loud there. It's going to be a darn near full arena. Mark Cuban's going to be going crazy. I'm sure Dirk's going to be there. A bunch of Dallas Cowboys were there, former and current. Michael Irvin, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott. It's going to be a crazy, crazy scene in Dallas. And I got the Mavericks winning. I got them closing out the Clippers tonight. I think history tells us Paul George turns into Pandemic P in these must-win games. And that's what I anticipate it's going to happen. So, looking forward to watching it. It's going to be I think it's going to be a wacky game. It's going to be a crazy fourth quarter. I think it comes down to the final minutes. But if you're the Clippers, you don't want that. You don't want it to come down to the final minutes because the Clippers, all season long, regular season and postseason, have been the second worst team in basketball in what they call clutch time minutes. What is that, you ask? Last 2 minutes of a game when the score is within 5 points. Whether you're up 5 or down 5. If the score is within 5 points in the last 2 minutes, that's what they call clutch time minutes. The Clippers were the second worst team in the entire association. The only team that was worse was the Houston Rockets, who had the worst record in the entire league. So the Clippers don't want it to come down to the final minutes. They don't. They want it to win. They want to win in blowout fashion like they did the last time they were in Dallas in Game 4 this past Sunday. What you going to do? Kawhi. You said it's Kawhi town. You had the King's Crown keychain on your car. You said it's a new era. This is my town. LA's my town. It's not LeBron's. It's not the Lakers. This is my town now. Okay. I got a very nonverbal guy. Said a lot right there. In that New Balance commercial, those shoes that nobody wears, back in 2019. It's all on you, my man. Show us that you are the superstar that you told us you were. When you rarely tell us anything. Let me go down to Damian Lillard. The Portland Trailblazers fell to the Denver Nuggets yesterday. I thought Portland was going to win in 7 games. My first round series predictions are looking like a complete hot mess. Because if I'm right and Dallas wins this series, that means I'll have gone 3-5. In the 8 playoff series in the first round, I'll have went 3-5. The only series I would have gotten right is 76ers beating Washington, duh. Nets beating the Celtics, duh. And Milwaukee beating Miami. It turned out, duh. Every other series, I've been wrong on every one. Been wrong on every one. So that's kind of reality. But I had Portland even when they lost Game 5 and Damian Lillard put on one of the great playoff performances I've ever seen. 55 points, 12 threes, game tying 3 to force overtime, game tying 3 to force double overtime, all to have Robert Covington miss a wide open dunk and CJ McCollum to step out of bounds in the last 10 seconds. So Dame's like, could you give me, I'm dropping 55 out here. Could you give me just a little help? Just a little. Not much. Just help me out a little. We'll win this game. Didn't happen. Went to Game 6. And Portland built, I think they think they were up by as many as 14. Jokic took over down the stretch. Michael Porter Jr. had an excellent game. Looking forward to seeing what he does in the second round. I think Denver is building something special. They are building a championship team because once they get Jamal Murray back next year, I think they've got a legit big 3 in Jokic, Murray, and MPJ. Like this, and they're a deep team as well. So it's something to look out for. But I think, I think what's interesting is Damian Lillard missing all those shots in the fourth quarter. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact he was tired. He was exhausted. Because a lot of times if you're missing shots short, what's that? Legs. You're tired. He used all of his energy in Game 5, trying to will the Blazers to that win, and it ultimately did not happen. And so Damian Lillard, Mr. Portland, he's been as loyal as anybody to the Portland Trailblazers. He said last week nothing would mean more to him than to win a championship in the city of Portland. Well, last night, Dame, after the game, on Instagram, posted a picture. It was like of him walking in or out of the arena. I couldn't tell. And then a picture of him, congratulating Jokic after the series. And he had the late, great Nipsey Hussle, rest in peace, had the Nipsey Hussle quote, "How long should I stay dedicated? How long till opportunity meet preparation?" So that's kind of cryptic if you're a Portland Trailblazers fan, that he might be thinking about leaving. Now, Willie, I don't know. I mean, that's something that we're gonna have to find out in the next few months. I'm crossing my fingers. I hope he doesn't have to do what James Harden did in order to leave the Blazers. My criticisms of James Harden was not how he handled leaving Houston. I didn't like how he dissed his teammates. That was the only problem. But as far as alienating the front office, that didn't bother me because, look, he wanted out of there. Houston was terrible. He wanted to go to a contender. I don't blame him. I just wish he could have handled it better. I hope Damian Lillard doesn't have to become a locker room cancer, which Lord knows he is not in the slightest. He's as good of a guy, as good of a leader as there is in the league. I hope he doesn't have to do that in order to force his way out of Portland if he decides to do so. So reports have come out that over the last few months, the Knicks, the surprise team of the league, the Cinderella story up until they got beaten 5 by Trae Young and the Hawks in the first round, that the Knicks reached out to the Blazers about possibly acquiring Damian Lillard. And can you imagine Damian Lillard at the Garden? Woo! Knicks fans, you ready for that? Because that would be, you want to talk about a show. Like, we don't get to see Damian Lillard that much because he's in Portland. They're on the West Coast. All their games tip off at 10 o'clock Eastern. They're not a national NBA brand. They haven't won a championship since the 70s and Bill Walton. But if he goes to a team like possibly the Lakers or the Knicks, nationally known NBA franchises, they're playing the player in the league because we all know he's clutch. We all know he's one of the best distance shooters in the league. We all know that when it's Dame time, look out. When he's pointing to his wrist, something big just happened, and he's pointing to his wrist a lot in close games because I believe he's the clutchest player in the NBA today. And I think he's one of the 5 clutchest players ever. I put him up there with Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, Robert Horry. He's up there with all of them. Because keep in mind, Damian Lillard, and I've read the stat many times on the show before, but there's 2 guys in the history of the NBA playoffs that have hit 2 series-ending buzzer beaters. Like, they ended the series, game-winning shot at the buzzer, good night, see you next season. 2 guys have done that in the history of the NBA. Damian Lillard and Michael Jordan. That's pretty good. Anytime you're in the GOATs company in any category when it comes to basketball, you're doing something pretty darn good. And so Dame's 30 years old. He's in his prime. He's got a lot more all-star years left in him. I don't want to see it wasted in Portland and getting eliminated in the first round year in and year out because 4 of the last 5 years, that has been the case. They've lost in the first round. In most of those cases, if not all, he's lost to a better team. And that's what happens in a 7-game series. It's not like the NFL where it's, hey, we may not be better than them, but it's a 60-minute game. Anything can happen. Like we can, if we outplay them for 60 minutes, that's all we need. We got a shot. Whereas in a series, you got to beat them 4 times in 7 tries, and that's really hard to do when you are the underdog. If the other team does not have injuries, and so if CJ McCollum, it's kind of like the Chris Middleton dilemma that the Bucks had. Like Giannis is a superstar. He's one of the 5 best players in basketball. But if Chris Middleton is your number 2, I don't care how great Giannis is. You're not winning a championship. And I said that over and over on the show over the last year. So what did the Bucks do? They went out and got Drew Holiday. Now, Chris Middleton is their 3. They're even deeper. They're a championship contender, I believe. Portland, CJ McCollum's a nice player. He's had seasons where he's been borderline all-star. But if he's your second best player, you're not contending for a title. You're just not. And so whether it's Portland going out and getting a second star for Dame, which they have to do via trade, they're not going to land a big name free agent in Portland because it's a small market. So they got to make a trade for somebody. Who would that be? I don't know. Paul George. Maybe they go out and get Kawhi possibly. I don't know. I don't know who they acquire. But in order to keep Dame happy, keep Dame in Portland, you got to make a deal. You got to make something happen. Because I hate seeing great players, waste of career. I don't want to say waste because I feel like I'm taking a shot at the Portland organization, which I think is well run. But when you have a great player like this losing in the first round year in and year out and having games like he did Wednesday night or Tuesday night, I should say, dropping 55, hitting 12 threes, the new record in a playoff game, you just want to see him in a winning situation. And so, a lot to be determined whether he does decide to leave Portland or not, whether he does request a trade, whether the Blazers go out and get him a second superstar. I think Terry Stotts is gone. I think he's going to be fired. And certainly we'd have to sit and wait and see who the new head coach would be in Portland. But, that's the reality the Blazers are in right now, that because they haven't been able to go out and land a second star next to Dame in a trade, he's unhappy. And I don't blame him. When you're putting up performances like he has in the playoffs, and for the last 5 years, not even getting out of the first round, that's frustrating. That's gonna eventually get to you to where you're like, okay, I'm in my prime. I'm 30. It's not gonna last forever. I gotta capitalize on what I've got now at the height of my basketball powers and go after a championship. I mean, how many jobs? Like, just keep in mind, if you're a Blazers fan, you're like, I don't want Dame to leave. I don't get why he would. Listen. How many jobs in America do you only really get a shot to be great at for 15 years? Like, people normally don't retire at 40, But it's basketball. It's professional sports. Eventually, once you get around 40 years old, you just don't have that same ability that you used to. Tom Brady put off to the side here. And even he's obviously not the same. Tom Brady at 34 is obviously better than Tom Brady at 44. I mean, that's, of course. So that's kind of reality that professional athletes are in. I hope Dame does what's best for him, whether that's leaving Portland, whether it's Portland getting a second star to pair next to him. But I want to see Damian Lillard in the championship discussion. I think it's good for him. I think he's earned that as one of the premier players in the NBA. I think you get to a point where stars are like, I'm not going to be this great forever. I gotta capitalize on this. I don't want to be on that list with Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, John Stockton, where it's, yeah, they were great, but where's the rings? Like, I don't want to be on that list. That's what Kevin Durant said in 2016. That's what LeBron James said in 2010. Now, Dame is not on their level, but he is a great player. He's going to be a Hall of Famer one day. He wants to capitalize possibly on winning a championship, whether that's in Portland or not. So this whole loyalty thing, like, loyalty in sports is kind of overrated because you can only be loyal to somebody so long before eventually you got to be loyal to yourself. You got to look out for yourself and say, what's best for my career? What gives me the best chance to put a ring on my finger? And so I think Dame's weighing his options. I think that Instagram post says, I wouldn't say it says a lot, but it says something. I'll read it again. How long should I stay dedicated? How long till opportunity meet preparation? The quote by Nipsey. So this is a really interesting story to follow. Now, real quick, I just want to say I wasn't able to get to it on yesterday's show. I have my good buddy Ryan Flowers from Clutch Sports Talk. Be sure to catch his show out pretty much wherever you're watching this show live on Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Great dude, great show, so be sure to check it out. Had him on, obviously talked about the Lakers and the Clippers collapsing Game 5 and all the stories. And I'll get to my playoff predictions in the second round in just a second. But I just want to give a big shout out to one of my favorite athletes over the last couple of years, and that's Naomi Osaka. She's ranked the number 2 tennis player in the world. I think she's number 1. I think she's phenomenal. She's 23 years old. Man, sky's the limit for her. I mean, Serena Williams is still out here competing in the French Open, and at her age, past her prime, what's Naomi Osaka capable of doing over the next decade? So, she's certainly got a very bright career ahead of her, and she's done amazing things to this point. But she pulled out of the French Open because the French media over there has a history, you can look it up, of being brutal. You think the American media is bad? Whether you do or not, it's nothing. It is nothing, man, compared to the French media. They are brutal. They ask questions that people in the American media, certainly in sports, would get crushed for asking. Would get crushed. It's questions like, Like nothing about how well you did. It's always, well, what he could have done better. That's for the athlete to decide. That's for their trainers. That's for their coaches to decide. That's not for you, the media, to decide. And so for that reason, because they've been pretty brutal on her, and, Serena Williams attested to it, Venus Williams attested to it, she said, I'm not going to attend this press conference. She got fined, and she decided, you know what? I got to take care of myself mentally. I'm going to pull out of the French Open. And so it sucks to see that the tennis association over there didn't really address the problem. That, hey, media, do your job right. Quit asking stupid questions. Quit asking questions that's going to make a young athlete doubt herself. Remember, she came on the scene when she beat Serena 21 years old. Like, she was still basically a kid. She's still basically a kid coming into the national scene, in the national spotlight, beating the GOAT, Serena. And there was obviously a lot of controversy around that match. I get it. And it took a toll on her mentally. It did. And she said she's dealt with depression since 2018. She said she's a very, you can just see in her interview, she's a very introverted person. She's a shy person. She said she's dealt with anxiety. And so wish Naomi Osaka the very best. It does my heart good, because mental health is something I'm very, very, very passionate about. And so it does my heart good to see these athletes, Naomi Osaka, Dak Prescott, Michael Phelps, Serena, Abby Wambach, DeMar DeRozan, and countless others. LaMarcus Aldridge talked about it the other day in the Players Tribune. Like, all these athletes talking about, hey, I'm not doing great right now. This is, there's something that I need to address and take care of. And listen, mental health is just as important. I would even argue more important than physical health. Because look, if these athletes are in a good mental state, it's going to affect their play. It's going to affect their play. Which, what does that do? Cost them money. Cost them possibly endorsements. And so what Naomi Osaka is doing is she's saying, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to look out for myself and make sure that I'm all right. Right? I'm going to address my mental health just as I would do if I had a knee injury or an ankle injury or something that I had to attend to physically. She's doing the exact same thing mentally. I applaud her for it. God bless her. Hopefully she's, I hope she's doing well. You just hate when you hear anybody doing, struggling mentally. So, man, big shout out to Naomi Osaka for what she did. And can't wait to see her back out in the court soon. And just wishing her all the very best. So I wasn't able to get to that yesterday, but was really, for someone, that young in the spotlight, coming in at 21 years old and dealing with these issues that she's been dealing with, takes a lot of courage, and I applaud her for it. And I applaud every athlete and every person in general who speaks about, mental health issues that they might be dealing with. Because look, there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be ashamed of. If you're dealing with something, man, I think I read even half the country deals with depression. So it is common, it is normal, and you need to get help if you're not doing well. Because if you're not good mentally, everything else doesn't matter. It just doesn't. No amount of money will fix it. No amount of nothing. That won't matter. So good on you, Naomi. So final topic, NBA playoffs, second round begins tomorrow. The first round very well could conclude tonight. I believe it will. I think Dallas beats LA in 6 games tonight. Second round starts tomorrow. I'm crossing my fingers that my second round predictions are a heck of a lot better than my first rounders, because there's a slight possibility I will go 3-5. And 2 of those series that I predicted correctly were pretty darn obvious. You could argue all 3, but whatever. So second round starts tomorrow. Brooklyn, Milwaukee. I'll predict that in a second. I'm going to get to Atlanta and Philly, to start. I think personally, Milwaukee Brooklyn, I think that's the NBA Finals. I think whoever wins this series, if they stay healthy the rest of the way, the rest of the playoffs, they are going to win the NBA championship. Milwaukee's deep. They got the two-time MVP in Giannis. The addition of Jrue Holiday, said it at the time, unbelievable addition. He's a great two-way player, one of the best in the game, and that it's obviously shown itself. They add in guys like PJ Tucker, Brent Forbes, shooters, wings, good defensive players. This is going to help the Bucks in the long run, and then obviously the Nets have more firepower offensively than any team we've ever seen. You've got three guys that can get their own shot as well as anybody in the history of the game. Kevin Durant, I think, is the greatest pure scorer ever. James Harden is one of the 5 best scorers ever. Kyrie Irving, best ball handler I've ever seen, best finisher in the paint that doesn't dunk that I've ever seen. So you got all that, and I'll get into that in just a second. I'll start with, though, second round, Atlanta Hawks, who are coming out there 5-game gentleman's sweep of the New York Knicks, where Trae Young became the new villain at the Madison Square Garden, taking on the Philadelphia 76ers, who all of a sudden are a little shaky because Joel Embiid now has a slight meniscus tear. He missed Game 5 the other night. It didn't matter because the Sixers were playing a lesser team in the Washington Wizards. They took care of business. What's going to be key all series long for Philadelphia? Depth. Can guys like Seth Curry, Thibault, Dwight Howard, when Embiid is not out there, can those guys step up for Philadelphia? Can they get stops when they have to? They're one of the best defensive teams in the league, right? Can they make big shots when they have to? They've got a lot of shooters. They're well coached. And something else, another concern, Ben Simmons. He's I think outside of Giannis, we can call Ben Simmons the best player in the league who can't shoot because he's great at everything except shooting. He cannot shoot. He's got the worst free throw percentage of any non-center in basketball at 61%. That's not good at all. But he's a great rebounder. He's a great floor general. He's an unbelievable defensive player. He's up for Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's the favorite in Vegas to win it. But offensively, he can be a liability. So he's got to step up, especially if Embiid misses Game 1 or any games, after that. Like, he's got to be that dude. Tobias Harris, he's better offensively, but everywhere else, Ben Simmons is a better basketball player than Tobias Harris. He's got to step up for Philadelphia. This is what they drafted number 1 to do. If Embiid is out, we don't need you to carry us, but give us that extra lift, that extra juice that we need to advance. Are they a better team than Atlanta? I believe so. But I don't think Embiid's playing in Game 1. I don't think they're going to risk it. Will he miss any more games? That, of course, remains to be seen. But I believe Atlanta makes it tough on him. Remember, Atlanta, and I said this on yesterday's show, they've always been a good offensive team since they got Trae Young. They got shooters and scorers everywhere. The problem was they couldn't stop anybody. It seemed like every other night they were giving up 140 points to somebody. Defensively, they were atrocious. But Lloyd Pierce gets fired midseason. Nate McMillan, who I'm going to say it until it happens, needs to be the head coach. He shouldn't just be the interim. Get this guy in a long-term deal, Atlanta. You have found something. You've got to sign this man to a long-term extension. Now, Nate McMillan, what's his background? Defense. He was a great defensive player in college. He was a great defensive player in the NBA. That's his calling card. So he doesn't have to teach these guys to be great offensive players. But can they play great team defense? And what do? 27-10 down the stretch of this season. I think they might have had like the 3rd best record in the NBA after they changed to Nate McMillan, right? So they were one of the best basketball teams in the league once they made that change. And so Atlanta can play defense. We know they can score at the best of them. Trae Young's going to do his thing. He showed in round 1. He is not afraid of the moment. The Philadelphia crowd is going to be hopefully no, bad fan activity. So let's throw that to the side. But the Philadelphia crowd, it's going to be tough on him. And, it's going to be tough for him. Going to be tough for Atlanta. I do think they push this 6 games, but I do have Philadelphia winning and advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals. But the health of Embiid is imperative. It is imperative, it is huge for the 76ers to have a shot at winning the 2021 NBA title. Now, the other series, the highly anticipated one, the one that I basically am calling the finals. 3-seed Milwaukee Bucks, 2-seed Brooklyn Nets. Man, been looking forward to this for a while. Because what's interesting about this series, okay, you've got the two superstars. We got more than two, but you got the best player on both teams. Kevin Durant in Brooklyn, Giannis in Milwaukee. Those two guys are going to cancel each other out, right? They're both going to be great in the series. As long as they're healthy, and man, please, Lord, let these guys be healthy. They're going to be great. They're going to cancel each other out, and it's going to be a great battle. Second best players. In Brooklyn, it's James Harden. In Milwaukee, it's Jrue Holiday. Well, what's interesting about this, Harden's obviously a better player than Jrue Holiday, as good as Jrue Holiday is. But James Harden has struggled in the postseason, especially in those game 5, 6, 7 type situations. Jrue Holiday is arguably the best defensive guard that we have in the league. Dylan Brooks, guys like that, he won't lock down your best player, but he will make them work for everything they get. And we've seen when you wear James Harden down in playoff series, it shows. And so you have a physical defender like this and a guy who can obviously, give you 20. Could they cancel each other out? Who knows? Now the threes are really interesting because for Brooklyn it's Kyrie Irving, for Milwaukee it's Chris Middleton. Now Chris Middleton has not had a good playoff history, but now he's the third option, not the second. Kyrie, aside from LeBron, has struggled in the playoffs. But when he's not the number one, Kyrie's been amazing in the playoffs. So that'll be an interesting matchup to watch as well. They won't be going one-on-one too much, but just something to look out for. I think it's a barn burner. I think it goes back and forth. I think no team truly seizes true momentum, if you will. I think it goes the distance. I think it's going 7 games. I think it's going to Brooklyn, New York for a Game 7. Winner advances to the Eastern Conference Finals to take on Philly, who I believe will beat Atlanta in 6, as I just mentioned. And I believe it's a close game, and Brooklyn wins it. Kevin Durant, they find out, okay, he's the guy. He's the dude who's been in bigger games than any of us. He's going to take the big shots down the stretch. As great as James Harden, Kyrie are, KD is that dude. 2-time champion, 2-time finals MVP, 1-time regular season MVP. He's the greatest pure scorer I've ever seen. And so Brooklyn, I believe throughout this series, will find out, okay, this is our guy. This, as great as Harden and Kyrie are, this is our guy. This is our guy to take us home to the Eastern Conference Finals against Philly. I believe it happens. I believe it's an amazing series. Nets in 7. Now to the Western Conference. You got either the Dallas Mavericks or the Los Angeles Clippers. I believe it'll be Dallas taking on the 1-seed Utah Jazz. Yes, I did predict Brooklyn to beat Utah. I'm not proud of it. They got game 1, and then after that, Utah just pretty much took care of business from there. Game 3 was interesting, but Utah obviously showed to be the better team. I'm going to take, regardless of the winner of Dallas and the Clippers, I think it's the same outcome. I've got Jazz in 6. I think if the Clippers advance, Clippers have never been to Western Conference Finals. So the Clippers will be the Clippers. They'll find a way to screw it up. I think they'll find a way to screw it up tonight. So, we probably won't even have to, wait till the second round. We'll probably get it tonight. If Dallas advances, which I believe they will, for them it's Luka or bust. They're not deep enough. The Jazz are arguably the deepest team left in the playoffs. They go 10 deep. Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley, Bogdanovich, Jordan Clarkson, 6th man of the year. Ingles, finalist for 6th man of the year. Right? Royce O'Neal, just great defensive players, great shooters, great wing players. Basically what wins in the NBA today, and it got them the best record in the league. I believe Utah wins in 6. They advance to the Western Conference Finals, and my good buddy Across the Pond, James, the Across the Pond Sports Podcast, go check them out. Shout out to them. Will be a very happy camper. He's a lifelong Jazz fan. So hopefully that happens for him out there across the pond, of course, as their podcast is called. I'm doing a little promoting of my predictions. Last series, Denver Nuggets, Phoenix Suns. I actually think this is a pretty quick series. I got Phoenix in a gentleman's sweep in 5 games. Similar, not to the extent Dallas is, but Denver is close to that Jokic or bust. Michael Porter Jr. is one of the best young players in the league, and I think we're finally starting to see it. I guess the whole NBA world is starting to see it now that the Nuggets are in these big playoff games against Portland. Can he give you that consistently? Because I don't expect Monte Morris, to do what he did in Game 5. You can't really expect that from him. They're missing Jamal Murray. They're missing Will Barton. With a team as deep as Phoenix, with so many guys like Chris Paul, Jay Crowder that have been in big playoff games, with Devin Booker, who, I mean, is just as gifted a scorer as we have in the league, with Mikal Bridges, with Cameron Payne, who's playing with extreme confidence. He didn't play well last night, but he's had a great playoff so far. I've got Phoenix advancing to the Western Conference Finals. They beat Denver in 5 games, and that is the end of the season for the Denver Nuggets. So to go over it, I got, as long as Embiid's relatively healthy, I've got Philadelphia in 6 over Atlanta. I think Atlanta gives them some problems. I got Brooklyn in an amazing 7-game series against Milwaukee. I've got, regardless of the winner of Dallas and the Clippers tonight or Sunday, if it goes to a Game 7, I've got the winner of the last first-round series falling to the Utah Jazz in 6 games, and I've got the Phoenix Suns gentlemen sweeping the Denver Nuggets and advancing to the Western Conference Finals, which, ironically, that's what they did in 2010. Last time the Suns were in the playoffs, they got to the Western Conference Finals and fell to the Lakers and Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol. So there you go. That's my predictions. Long show today, but boy, it was a packed one, as I said at the beginning of the show. So that is all the time we have for today. Looking forward to Dallas Clippers tonight. I got Dallas 110-106. They close out the series. The Clippers go home, and that's that. And we're in for an excellent second round, especially out east. So hope all y'all stay safe out there. God bless you all.